for your mind to be free of outside influences because you took care of them so you can live in the moment. To me, that's success.
Hey, Bané again.
All right. Hey.
So you mentioned that you can testify that food is great in Serbia, and I talked about a little bits of corruption and bribery, perhaps. So let's start with food. Would you say it's at all comparable to other European countries, or it's very authentic? And what is the kind of the dominant feature of it? Is it spice? Is it soups? Maybe what is it?
Oh, it's meat.
Meat.
Oh, it's meat. Like I'm waiting for a day when desserts are going to start having meat. So yeah, if you're vegetarian or vegan, then probably not the best place for you. If you're not, then it's good. Look, things are like you have authentic Serbian cuisine, which is as good as it's ever been. And being that I haven't lived in this country for 22 years and now I've been here for 2, it's like I always like to eat that food again, right? The part that's new is the part where they are starting to experiment with international food, you know, whether it be sushi, whether it be some, I don't know, Asian food, whether it be Indian food, Chinese food left and right. The fun thing about that food is that it's amazing. Like, I wouldn't expect to eat good sushi here. Mm-hmm. I ate amazing sushi here. Mm-hmm. Like, is it the best sushi in the world? No. Is it the best I've ever had? No. But is it way better than I thought it would be? Yes, gazillion times better than I thought it would be. And talking about, I'm not going to jump the subject. I'm going to jump the country. Yeah. I went to Croatia. I went to Croatia actually several times over the last couple of years, but twice I went with my wife for a vacation. And that was my first time in Croatia since I was probably like 5 years old. And I barely remember those times. I was a kid. The food, seafood, like, look, I lived in California. I've been to Hawaii numerous times. I lived in New Zealand. I've been to Australia. I've been to South America. I've been to Mexico. I've traveled the world. I love seafood. I was convinced that I already ate the best seafood in the world until I went to Croatia. I'll never forget my first meal in Croatia. And I was like, what the fuck is this? How is this even possible? It's amazing. Like, everything about the food in Serbia, yes, it's good, it's amazing, but what blew my mind was seafood in Croatia. It's second to none. I literally don't know anything that would compare to it for me personally.
Have you had a chance to be in Portugal?
Yes. I was in Portugal. I was in Spain. Amazing food. Yeah. But it doesn't even come close to it. And the funny thing is, I'm not the only one who says that.
Okay, so I have to make a note of that. And I haven't been to either Serbia or Croatia. It's pretty high on my list to get to Croatia one day, probably soon. But that said, I haven't been even to Latin America. So
okay,
a lot of things still in near future, to a lot of places to visit still.
Well, if you come to Serbia while I'm still here, you have your personal tour guide. So
here we go. So how long are you going to be there? Do you know?
Probably until May or June next year.
Okay, yeah, so it gives me some time.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, Bané, so I'd like to wrap up the topic of consulting. How do you look at consulting, kind of like your personal approach to it? Because I've met people who take it completely differently. Some people take it as just a higher paid job. Some people take it as a personal growth opportunity. Some people take it as teach somebody opportunity. How about you? Where you stand, and maybe it's somewhere that I haven't even mentioned.
I don't think it can be generalized. I've a lot of my experience with consulting was that someone just built a money-making machine.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, you can't just build money-making machine out of nothing. You have to provide something. So well, let me sum it up. I don't think that there's a lot of middle. I think that there's a decent amount of consulting companies and consultants that do amazing work that unless they were there, that work wouldn't have been done. And then there's a lot of freeloaders, motherfuckers, that just kind of like peg on and they exist and they collect paycheck for not doing shit for belonging to a certain organization. I don't know whether there's more of these or these. I don't know that, but that has been my experience. I've been in consulting for probably several years. Yeah, like I said, you can't generalize. I have really close friends that work for consulting companies and are telling me amazing stuff about it. Like we're close friends. They would tell me if it's shit. They would tell me if it's bad in any way, shape, or form, but they're not. They're telling me all the best things about it. And then I work with consultants from certain organizations on a day-to-day basis, and I see that they're just like freeloaders. They're wasting air. They're not doing shit.
Flash.
Yes.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to what you described just now. Those folks that seems to be just showing up, collecting paycheck, and just crossing fingers that their contract get extended.
Yep.
I think my question was maybe around what it gives you, rather than talking about how you look at it, more like how it impacted your life, whether you find yourself in it, whether you grew from it, and anything in between.
Definitely grew from it. I definitely was exposed to different industries, different. See what it gives you, as you know. If you work for, I don't know, a regular company, and you spend 15 years of your career there, then it's all same people, same companies, just same shit over and over again with maybe some subtle differences over long periods of time. But if you work for a consulting company for, let's say, 15 years again, you're going to have God knows how many clients. It's all different people. That's all different, probably even different industries, different stuff that they work on. You get exposed a lot more, and you're seeing, you get a lot more experience to actually see what's out there in the real world, rather than if you're stuck in one place, you can read all the books you want, but if you don't get to see it, it's not the same. So definitely it gave me that, gave me an opportunity to travel, to see new places. But most of all, gave me an opportunity to work with different people. And I think that because of that, because I was exposed a lot to different people, good and bad, and I don't mean good and bad personality, I mean good or bad professionals, that's helping me kind of assess the situation really well, which is important in agile coaching. Like when you're coaching, whether it's a team, whether it's an organization, whether it's whatever, who's there who actually is part of that team, who knows what the team is, who is willing to make a step forward and achieve a certain goal, or who's there just collecting the paycheck. Because those that are collecting the paycheck are just dead weight, just pulling everybody down. And approach to them is different than the approach, has to be different than the approach to people who are motivated, who actually want to move forward.
I think personally, I can definitely agree with you on all of those points. Also is what I picked up, I think, due to the exposure that you mentioned, I think what I picked up is kind of the social awareness. Like it's almost like you have a catalog of different personalities in your head, and you kind of, I won't say you use stereotypes, but you kind of gain advantage of really quickly pick up who is who
Mm-hmm.
just by body language or how they show up on different how you call it, procedures, right? Like different meetings, or are they
Mm-hmm.
on time or not? How they even do like are they muting themselves appropriately or not? And what kind of mic they use? And are they putting a picture in their profile? Are they shy? Are they talkative? Not talkative? So I think what you said, exposure, different companies, different people, allows you to really dissect the situation extremely fast, and that helps you in real life outside as well.
Mm-hmm.
You just go grocery shop and you see what this person might represent as a human, as a family member, as an individual, and what to expect. Basically, you can predict time more accurately and faster.
Correct.
And if you work in a single company most of your career, I mean, for one, it's probably super boring, at least for myself. I mean, some people seek instability. I don't. I want variety because, like, basically, variety is my stability.
Fair enough.
And I would compare like reading one book a year or reading like 20 books a year. So I think consulting gives you that 20 books a year experience.
Mm-hmm. Definitely
Different,
does.
different problems, different challenges, and you can see solutions in some of them, right? They might not have a problem with one thing, they have a different thing. So you see how they solve the first thing, and you bring that to the new client as a way to solve their problem.
Yes, and you know what? I like your analogy with the books. And it's the same with consulting. Like, are you going to read one book, one really big book? Like, you're going to read, let's say you're going to read every day. Are you going to read one really big book throughout the year? Or are you going to read 20 smaller books throughout the year? Well, ultimately, yes, it's a lot more interesting. It's a lot more dynamic. It's a lot better to read 20 books. But what if 19 out of those 20 books were shit?
Mm-hmm.
And this one big long book was amazing?
Mm-hmm.
Then you kind of have a dilemma. But if all 20 books were amazing, then there's no dilemma. I'll take 20 books. End of story.
Oh, even
Right?
15 of them, right? Let's
Well,
say five
sure.
is shit, 15 is
Sure.
decent. And
Yes. Yes.
each of those, like sometimes I think about books, let's say ultimately about, I guess, wisdom slash knowledge about life, right? Let's say it's like some sort of bar, like a level of water which goes up or down. At some point, even with can take specific field, you become more and more and more advanced as far as your knowledge. And then sometimes you pick up a book and you don't really get new things per se, but it might be one sentence, the entire book, that adds you another percent to your knowledge, right? You was at like 60%, became like 61. Entire book, just one sentence was meaningful to you, but it still raised your level by 1%, which is still progress.
I agree completely. And again, you can translate that to consulting. You can have a shitty contract for 6 months, but you can have one situation that took a week that you learn more than you've learned in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility as
Also,
well.
it teaches you about yourself. Like I had moments where I would kind of blow up a little bit in front of clients. I had to like apologize and things like that. But it also taught me about myself and about others, like how they treat work, or their motivations or their objectives versus mine. And I know myself already to a degree. Mine are pretty high standards, pretty big things to achieve. That's my goal. Or others perhaps can be like surface level, or the quality of end result not doesn't matter so much.
Okay. I can see that.
All right, negatives and positive real quick for consulting, that to close the topic. So we talked about exposure, like maybe top 3 of the negatives that you can recall real quick.
Being involved in contracts that were made for whatever reason when we didn't really need to be there. when we just existed there for whatever reason, and we didn't have the support of the upper management, and we're expected to do something on our own when we don't have clearly defined, or what it was just, let's call them bad deals, bad contracts that were made between consulting company and the client. So when you find yourself in the middle of that, that's kind of shitty. What else could be negative? Sometimes travel can get, as much as sometimes it's amazing, but if you're going back and forth between two cities and just basically almost living at the airport, that can get boring pretty easy. Can I do 2 instead of 3?
Sure, that works.
Let's do that, yeah.
All right, so let's switch gears. I want to ask you about, how do you see success in life? What is it for you? There is another question gonna come next, and I wonder if you're gonna actually answer that one as a part of this one, but we'll see.
Success. Going to bed at night and being happy with your life. Just going to bed and be like, this is good. Like, obviously, in order for that to happen, you have to be healthy. People around you have to be healthy. You have to get along with people that are close to you. You have to financially be stable. I'm not saying rich, but you have to not worry whether you can pay your mortgage or rent next month. But basically just for your mind to be free of outside influences because you took care of them, so you can live in the moment. To me, that's success.
Beautiful. Could you double down on outside influences? So you mentioned finance, health. Anything else that you can account for?
I mean, those are pretty easy.
How about people? How about people?
Yeah. Relationships with people that you're close with, your family, your friends. Everything, like I'm going in my mind, I'm going through things that could keep me up at night.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be if I wasn't able to afford mortgage next month. It could be if I'm I don't know, arguing with a really close family member. It could be if I or a close family member is not well for whatever reason. I don't know what else. I learned not to give a shit about a lot of unimportant things. Generally, I have a rule whenever, like, look, every day or quite often, things don't go our way. And I always ask myself, am I going to laugh about this one day? And if the answer is yes, I literally can turn off worrying about it at that moment. Like, say I get a speeding ticket. Yeah, I'm kind of ticked off. Now I have to pay for something, but at the same time, I fucked up. So I should pay for it. Yep. So there's that. There's like responsibility aspect of it. But I can even be pissed at myself, but I can be like, will I be able to laugh about this a year from now? And the answer is like, yes, like whatever. I paid shit, like the situation from last week in Frankfurt, I got fined 50 euros for not wearing a mask on the train. And there was no sign anywhere that said you have to wear a mask. Was I ticked off at the moment? Yes, very. Mm-hmm. Will I laugh about this now that I tell you? Yes, I don't give a fuck. It's 50 euros. I'll live. Nothing's going to change. It was a shitty situation, but it's not enough to keep me up at night, to go back to the beginning part of this topic. So other than those 3 topics that we mentioned, I don't know what else could keep me at least up at night. And those are the ones that I'm saying when I say outside influences, those are the ones that I'm talking about.
So let's say hypothetically you have one of those big ones that triggered and something is going on that keeps you up at night. How do you deal with them? Do you practice meditation perhaps? Any kind of tricks that you come up with to actually calm yourself down and move forward?
No, I don't practice meditation, although I should. I've heard good things about it, so I'm probably going to try at some point. I use common sense a lot. Mm-hmm. if something's keeping me up at night and there's a solution to it, I'll work hard and hopefully in the most efficient way to find that solution. Unfortunately, some of the things that keep you up at night don't always have a solution. You have to accept it. That mostly has to do with health, of whether it's you or whether it's people around you. You know, there are times where you can't do anything about it.
Sure.
Those are the things that you have to accept the way they are. You cannot like them. You can cry about them, but they're not going to change. And for me, it's important to have that common sense to be able to distinguish between the two and keep, I don't want to say keep your composure, but I want to say like, stay focused on what you can do, so that you can continue to be good and excel in other important aspects of your life.
Yep. No, for sure. I think it helpful to people who are rational and structured in their brain to use this approach as you described, because it takes the emotion away or out of the picture. Also, I think writing diaries or like just putting thoughts on paper or iPad helps to structure your belief about the situation and rationalize it. It really takes emotion away. And I think that's the emotion what we're trying to deal with, right? It's mostly how to numb it or remove it entirely. And I think rationalizing situation helps a lot.
Yeah. And it's not, removing the emotion is not, the goal wouldn't be to remove the emotion from it. The goal would be to stop the emotion from making you make the wrong choice at that time. So to me, that would be like, if I show emotion, so be it. As long as I made the best possible decision at that difficult moment, I'm fine with all the emotions that come with it.
Right. You have I think two negatives of the emotion. One is hurts, perhaps, right? You don't feel well.
Yes.
And two is you might actually lose sleep. How would you, Bané, describe moments in your life, how you recall those moments in life where you felt like you reached the next level for yourself, either personal development or career, or some mental images that you come up in your head and then like, oh, here we go. This is one of those moments, kind of deja vu type of thing.
When my son was born. Not when he was born, but when he came home a week later, when I first met him, because of COVID, I wasn't able to be there. I wasn't able to even see him before he came home, before I picked him up from the hospital. So that day, but it turned out like that. Someone drew a line, like there's my life before and there's my life after. And it's not something that was forced on me or in any way, shape, or form. It just happened. It turned out to be like that. You see things in a different way. You obviously prioritize different things in a different way. Very different view on life.
Could you talk about
that? Sure. In many aspects, it's like, it's any decision after that day came with prerequisite, is this the best thing for him? Or how is this going to be for him? It doesn't matter like how big or how small. Like, for example, we traveled to the US just this last summer and I'm booking the flights. So it's not, all right, which flight is, I don't know, the cheapest, or which is the best layover option, or which airline I prefer. No, none of that. It's like, which airlines have the longest bassinets for the baby, and which layovers will give me around 3 hours, because I don't want less than that, because I don't want to have to run with him through the airport, and I don't want him more than that because it's going to be boring. And that's just a small example, but every day, everything you do in life is now, you're not a priority anymore. And it's not that I'm not a priority because someone told me, oh, here, now you have a child. Now that child's a priority. Now you have to, no, it's like, I chose that.
Voluntary.
It's voluntary. Exactly. So yeah. At the
What you
same time, you got to keep in mind, I'm well aware because, and that's one of the Eastern European traits. And you tell me if it's the same in Ukraine. People, older people, parents, grandparents, tend to make a lot of sacrifices for their kids, which is admirable, but they have no limit. They'll like run themselves into the ground just so their children can have something that's, let's say, not necessary. So I'm trying to stay rational when it comes to that, because it's important that I and my wife and I, that like us, the adults, the parents, that we stay healthy and happy, that we take care of our needs as well, not because we're selfish, but because we still need to be here for him, good and strong and happy 15 years from now. Right. Because if I run myself into the ground 2 years from now, I haven't done him any good. So there's that aspect as well.
No, I really like how you put it and how your mind works, because to get there to this realization, you actually need to think about it and model in your head future, or see examples of somebody else already made mistakes or about to make, right? And
yes.
So very admirable, and thanks for sharing that. When you've been talking about how you take decision and you account for a kid and those decisions, kind of remind me of the book called One Thing. You might have heard about it. One Thing. It's the book basically says that you want to focus on a single track, a single project. And also, as a big part of this book, it describes that every decision, it's easier to take if you have a sentence that you keep on asking yourself. What is the one thing, by doing it, everything else becomes easier or necessary? Does it make sense? What is the one thing that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or necessary? And if you take this approach—
Easier or necessary?
Both, easier or unnecessary.
Or unnecessary.
Yeah.
So
basically, you can, using this approach for day-to-day life, you can keep on doing steps that eliminate shit from your life, or waste of time, or waste of energy. It's like, sometimes you might want to throw money at the problem. Sometimes you might just delegate it. Sometimes you might just say outright, I'm not shopping Black Friday because fuck this shit, I'm not going to spend time mall and even online. So that book, I think, is probably top of my list, or somewhere in top 10. It's very simple concept, but very powerful one.
It's called One Thing, right?
One Thing, correct. And it was written by a guy who I think was the founder of Keller Williams Real Estate Company.
Okay.
So basically, in a stint of time, it was a week, a month, a day, or a year, you said, what is the one thing I'm going to focus on? And this idea, or this approach, is also what, for example, Mark Zuckerberg was focusing on in early days of Facebook. He says, when people would come to his office saying like, hey, how about we try this thing or that feature, he would ask one question: would this give us growth? And if answer was, I don't know, or no, the answer was, I don't care about this feature, go find something that's gonna give us growth. So single point of focus, single goal, and that's it, and run with it. And he brings like science behind it and things like that.
That makes a lot of sense in professional development, in the business world. I don't know if you can do a single point of focus in your family.
Yeah, I guess you have to be kind of more
multi-track
person, yeah.
And you got to generalize, like say you have 2 kids, like which one are you going to focus on?
Kids, that's a single track, kids.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You got to generalize a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be kids in that case.
Yeah, but for me, for example, it was like, I have, for example, different things that happen in life. And I would say, well, this month's health is most important, or sleep is most important, or just focus on travel, or just focus on this and XYZ. And It does, I think, help me quite a bit to kind of remove noise, and you focus on something that you're probably going to achieve 100% because that's a single track. And there is
Sure.
really no excuse why you don't deliver what you wanted, given that you have abilities. Okay,
Sure.
let's talk about skydiving. How you end up liking that, how you end up trying it for the first time, and what was your emotions going to step on the plane and jump from the plane? Like, how you end up there to start with? Did you want to commit suicide?
I had a dream that I was jumping from the plane. At that point, I have 0 skydives. So that I'm jumping and then my parachute's not opening. And the dream wakes me up and I'm like, all right, it's time to go to skydiving school. So literally that day I signed up for the ground school, and they take you through ground school, through courses first. They explain how everything works. Then they, at least this school that I went to in New Zealand, they take you on a 1 tandem jump. And then you have several other jumps where instructors jump with you and hold you if necessary. So that was part of, like, I guess, general training. I guess the most crucial part there is the ground school, because
what is it?
Fear comes from not knowing things, right? And when someone dissects something and you realize how certain things work and how certain things operate, and then it's a completely different picture, right? So to me, that ground school was completely eye-opening. Obviously, like, I did a lot more learning on my own apart from that, and gain a lot of experience just by jumping over the last couple of years. And it gets you to the point, like, look, you might laugh right now, but skydiving is probably one of the safest sports that exist, especially if you're not fucking around. If you look at statistics, you'll see that I want to say between 80 and 90% of injuries or deaths happen to very, very experienced skydivers because they were fucking around, not because the parachute didn't open, because everybody thinks that for some reason. So, however, why I like it, it's because that's one of the very few things that I do. When I do it, I'm in that moment and I'm then and there and nowhere else. And I'm not just talking about just the jump. I'm talking whether it's on the ground, talking about what kind of jump we're going to do, whether I'm packing my chute, whether we're on the ride up. It really doesn't matter, but I'm living in the moment. And that's the feeling that I like. So, yeah.
So how many jumps you've done already so far?
230 something.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Look, it seems a lot for people that don't jump, but if I were to show up at a drop zone somewhere in the world and someone asked me how many jumps I have, and I said 230, and they'd be like, all right, so you just started recently?
Like, it's a good start.
Yeah, decent start, right? I'm talking like I've jumped with people that have had like 10, 13,000 jumps. Like 200 is nothing compared to that.
So I just can imagine their schedule, what does it look like? What, 5 jumps a week or something? Well, they'll give you 250 or so per year to get to 30,000. I guess it's a couple a day.
So, well, I've jumped, like, I think the most I've jumped in a day was 7. But what do you think is the record, the world record, maybe even Guinness World Record of how many jumps in 24 hours?
24 hours.
Yeah.
So assuming there is a crew that helps you to do it faster, right?
Yes.
$35.
Either 650 or 750. I'm going to Google it right now.
How is it possible? You probably have to do bungee jumping from the plane because they can pull you in and you can continue jumping.
640. So the guy did it for his 50th birthday. He obviously had multiple parachutes. He had people packing his parachutes. He wasn't going as high as we do. He just do what's called hop and pop. He just jumps out, pulls the parachute, lands, throws the parachute off, gets into the, I think it was, I don't know if it was an airplane or a helicopter, gets in, puts the parachute on while he's in there climbing to an altitude. And he did 640 in 24 hours.
Man, and because it's so frequent, seems like ultimately your room for error increases because you're rushing a little bit, right? You're trying to make that many jumps per day.
Well, statistically, you are right. You're absolutely right. But then the only part that he has to do is pull the parachute, because he just jumped out of a plane and he doesn't want to die, and land. Mm-hmm. Everything else is done by the crew. And the crew, I don't know how many people he had on the ground, but let's say he had 20 people who are packing your parachute over the course of 24 hours. They're going to be fresh. They can change every however often is needed. So it's the very competent person at that moment doing whatever needs to be done. There's no way in hell one person can do that with full concentration 24 hours, but with crew, yes.
But 640, whatever the number was, that's just hard to even process. How is it even possible?